Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, Federation Fleet Command. Date, standardized human time, August 21st, 2136. Making an enemy of a starship captain was ill-advised, even in these trying times. My astonishment at being evicted from Venlil territory by force still hadn't faded. There was no reason for flagrant disrespect, especially when we were responding to their cry for help. When Governor Tarver started waving missiles around, it felt personal. It was fair to say, and I harbored a permanent grudge against them. Tarver's behavior could be chalked up as war-induced psychosis, if not for the mayhem that followed. Without a word as to why, the Venlil withdrew from the Federation's military. Their borders were sealed, cutting off crucial supplies and outposts. Any ship seeking entry were turned back at gunpoint. Alien diplomats and visitors were barred from leaving Venlil space, or even contacting their homeworlds. It was like something from a dystopian novel. Division in our ranks was the last thing we needed, with how the Axur had been pressing lately. A diplomatic resolution was the desired outcome to any crisis, if at all possible. But when it took begging for the Venlil to provide proof of life, it didn't seem there was room for negotiation. Tarver hadn't offered any time frame, terms or conditions for its release. This was no temporary standoff either. It had been over a month and none of their actions were rescinded. The Federation were a lot of dithering idiots, afraid of ruffling feathers, but even their patience had limits. Major players, including my own Gojedi Union, were incensed at our people's hostage status. Judging by the protests across the galaxy, I wasn't the only one who felt compelled to take matters into my own paws. Whatever the Venlil Republic was hiding, I was determined to get to the bottom of it.
Sovlin.
Piri, the Gojedi Prime Minister, sighed in irritation. She must have seen my eyes gloss over.
You still with me? Or are you plotting revenge in that thick head of yours?
I blinked several times. Sorry, ma'am.
As I was saying, I'm disappointed in you. You went off snooping on the Venlil without permission, and used Federation forces to do so. What do you have to say for yourself?
Piri asked. I haven't crossed their border. I pointed a claw at the viewport towards the visible threshold. If we decide to break our people out by force, we need the facts. The Federation has a right to know what the Venlil are up to.
What makes you think they're up to anything?
Tarver isn't stupid enough to commit diplomatic suicide, not without cause. I mean, the resolution condemning their actions passed by unanimous vote. She's lucky we haven't done more than place their membership on probation. Piri tilted her head, weighing the circumstances for herself. Shutting down all communication overnight and banning travel looked draconian to me. The drastic nature of it all did not make sense. I couldn't fathom what quelled the populace's rebellion. The entire galaxy was iced out for an unknown transgression. Even the Venlil's closest allies were left baffled and in the dark. Talk of warfare was brewing, as much as the Federation wished for it not to be so. Why would Tarver invite such extreme fallout? What could make losing every partner worth it?
I don't disagree. The Venlil would need a serious incentive to draw our ire,
the politician said.
They've always been loyal to the Federation until now. What's your take?
Well, I would think it was cowardice if they had run off, I growled. It's as though they're trying to make enemies of us.
It can't be that. Not with the Axur breathing down their necks every hour of every day.
Piri focused her gaze on me, a disapproving glint in her eyes.
I should reprimand you, Sovlin, but I'd like some answers myself. What have you learned through your prying?
The Venlil are still letting someone into their territory. I'm not sure if it's a Federation member. A group of transports docked at a Finj outpost today. They weren't chased away like the rest of us.
Are you sure they were allowed to stay?
I'm positive. They got an escort from the ceremonial fleet. Tarver's personal parade. I'm just not close enough to make out their subspace origin. Not, without crossing the border.
So that's why you called me now. You want my blessing in case you get caught, and I hear about it the hard way.
That's one way of putting it, ma'am. May I poke around?
Very well. I want to report as soon as you learn anything. And Sovlin, don't make me regret this.
The video feed cut out. I eyed the space ahead of us with giddiness and gave my first officer a tail thump that meant to proceed. The posting was filled by Russell, a veteran of the Kolshian Commonwealth. There would be no objections to my plan from him. His allegiance was to the Federation first, and unveiling the truth about the Venlil's misdeed was in the collective interest. Anyone with eyes could see that their behavior was off. The crew leapt into action as Russell declared a new course for the Finches of Venlil space. We could hide behind the guise that we were patrolling and strayed into their territory by mistake. All I needed was to get in range for our signal interceptors. Local broadcasts could offer some clues if subspace readings proved unattainable. Our warship pivoted, angling us toward the forbidden region. I settled down in the captain's chair and monitored the bridge. We would drift over the border gradually, in the interest of stealth. If we were able to pull this mission off, I would be acclaimed for my initiative. Satisfaction swelled in my chest at the thought of adding to my repute.
Sir, you might want to look at the scanner data.
Russell barked.
Venlil patrol ship, heading straight for us.
I slammed my paw down in frustration. We're still on our own damn side of the border. They can't object to us patrolling our own damn space. According to the computer, the patrol vessel was on an intercept course toward us. The sensor data suggested their speed was at max velocity, well above safety recommendations. They were going to burn out their own engines, pushing them to that degree. How had they gotten wise to our plans? My call with Prime Minister Perry was encrypted, so I didn't see how they could have listened in.
Radio silence from that little boat.
Russell noted.
What do you want to do?
My spines bristled. Order them to change course at once and have weapons on standby. We're not going to let that shit heap stop us. With the viewport on highest magnification, I could make out a tiny dot racing toward our position. Its course was erratic, as though the stabilizers were close to giving out. Several hails had gone unanswered, and the Venlil ship failed to deviate from its course. The patrol vessel paid no regard to the border, breezing into our territory without any deceleration. Silence fell over the bridge. The tension was palpable. I knew my crew still felt some sense of attachment to the Venlil after years of steadfast alliance. It was for their sake that I wasn't striking this craft down on the spot. Fire a warning shot and hail them one final time, I ordered. If there's no acknowledgement, I want them finished. 3 plasma rounds were lobbed just above the patrol ship's flight path. Its pace slowed as though the pilot was second-guessing their decisions. The hesitation was brief, though. It returned to its stubborn sprint moments later. Had the Venlil fallen victim to some neurological plague? That would explain everything. I gritted my teeth. Kill them. They need to be taught a lesson.
Wait, sir. We're detecting 2 more vessels on their tail. Axur bombers.
My first officer said. At last, a decent explanation for why the Venlil refused to turn back. If those reptile bastards were after them, I suppose there was no retreating. Why they were unresponsive to our hails was another question, especially with the delicate situation between our species. The patrol ship's engine sputtered and the pilot coaxed it into a resting position. The vessel swiveled around to face the Axur bombers. It looked like an insect compared to any warship, yet its size did not prove a deterrent. As soon as the enemy pursuers became visible, it began hurling plasma rounds in our direction. The caliber was insufficient to trade blows with the Greys, but the helmsmen didn't seem to care. The coughing engine was prodded back to life, to give them a push in the enemy's direction. Yep, neurological plague. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The Republic craft dipped down to avoid return fire and pressed on with its advance. In spite of myself, I was impressed with the pilot's ability to overpower their instincts. Whatever my personal feelings toward the Venlil, this bravery was unmistakable, and to be honest, very unlike them. Their accuracy was lacking, however, and the Archer ships absorbed any hits that landed.
Sir, should we intervene?
My first officer asked. How many times have we saved them already? I grumbled. And for what? Rissell wanted to grasp her at me.
You wouldn't let the Axur kill innocent people over a grudge with Tava?
I suppose not. Advance on the Axur bombers and line them up with the railguns. I could sense the crew's relief from their eagerness to carry out the new orders. Perhaps they had been worried that my previous threat to let the Greys eat the Venlil was serious. It would take a more depraved captain than I to spectate a predator's hunt. The lights on the bridge dimmed, which was confirmation that the railgun was charging. In higher of doses, a blast of concentrated energy could chew through even Axur armor. There was a reason the Federation invested in such slow, gargantuan ships. Powering effective weapons required a large backbone. A radiant beam sailed through the inky sky, connecting with an enemy vessel. Pleasure rolled down my spines as our plasma launched through the engine. There was one Axur bomb that finished at a fiery flash. Our railgun would take several seconds to recharge, so I hoped the Venlil ship could hang on a little longer. The pilot's crazed maneuvers could only do so much for evasion. The final enemy was spewing quite the plasma torrent at them, unrelenting in their hunt. One round clipped the patrol ship on the bow. It lurched forward and sat dazed at the Axur's sights. My crew's efforts to rouse the railgun gained a new sense of urgency. The reptilians rounded on our forward allies, salerating to deliver the finishing blow. The Venlil were worded further by a clean hit to the propulsion system. The drive plume flickered out and the patrol ship lay paralyzed. Without mobility, the vessel was a floating tomb. The pilot's fire had ceased too. There was no telling if they had lost weapons or if it meant the worst. A surge of relief flooded my chest as our weapons flashed back online. There wasn't a second to spare, or any margin for error. The crew scrambled to unleash our hellfire. An energy lance penetrated the night sky, and I prayed that it would arrive in time. While the Venlil were traitors, I preferred them to the effronter sapiens known as the Axur. Our railgun strike pierced the Axur's shell, splicing them clean in half. With its dying breath, the predators discharged a barrage of plasma, imparting gift for their quarry. There was nothing we could do to intervene. All eyes turned to the unfolding scene with collective horror. The Venlil craft was idle, dead in the waters. The fireballs bore down on the cruiser, one after the other, closing the distance in a blur. Somehow, our sensors didn't record a direct impact. The blistering shots shaved its hull, straying wide by a hair's breadth. I imagine the occupants could all but smell the smoke. Talk about a near miss, I mused. The railgun must have jolted the Axur just enough. Geos echoed through the bridge, though the celebration was premature to me. The Venlil ship sustained serious damage and wasn't showing any signs of activity. Venlil ship, do you copy? I asked over the comms frequency. We can send medical assistance if needed. There was silence. My opportunism flickered back to life as I remembered the purpose of our foray. Nobody had communicated with anyone inside Republic borders for weeks. This was the perfect opportunity to force the Venlil to talk, to discover the truth behind their reclusiveness. We could start by asking some questions about the mysterious visitors. If you can hear me, Venlil ship, you are now in the custody of the Galactic Federation. Any attempt to flee will be met with extreme force, as will any efforts at resistance. I paused, making sure to emphasize my last words. Prepare to be boarded.